Welcome to the Truth and Liberty broadcast. We believe we have a mandate to bring godly change to our nation and the world through the 7 spheres or mountains of influence. To further this cause, we give away a product every week that will empower you to get involved in changing your life and changing our world. You can register for our weekly giveaway by subscribing at truthandliberty.net. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to receive weekly updates on guests, news, and much more. This is an interactive live cast, and we welcome your questions. To ask a question during the live cast, use the comment or chat features. Now get ready to dive into this week's topics with our hosts on location in Colorado, USA.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Truth and Liberty livecast. I'm Richard Harris, and I'm just so happy to have the opportunity tonight to come to you along with Karen Conrad, our co-host. And Karen is joining us by video tonight from Dallas, Texas. And if you've been watching Truth and Liberty for long, you know who Karen is. But if you're new, let me tell you, Karen is awesome. She is one of the actual founders of Truth and Liberty, and used to be a vice president here at Andrew Womack Ministries, and is just an amazing woman of God. And she's got her own ministry, Karen Conrad Ministries. She also helps lead another organization called Wealth Builders. She teaches vision and purpose, and we are just so blessed to have Karen helping us tonight. And Karen, it's so good to have you. Our special guest tonight is Paul Isaacs, and I'm going to introduce Paul in just a second. Paul is with an organization called Save the Storks, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But here at Truth and Liberty, as you know, it's an interactive process, and we've got a lot of great information to share with you, and so I'm going to kick it over to Karen and let her tell you more about that.
Oh, thank you so much, Richard. It's such an honor and a privilege to be on Truth and Liberty. Welcome, everybody. It is going to be an awesome night. And we've got a few updates to share with you before we get started. And one of them is if you are watching us on social media, Facebook or YouTube, we're so glad that you've joined us. But I want to encourage you, there is a better way to watch Truth and Liberty. And that is on the website, truthandliberty.net. And then we can assure you that we're not going to get censored or stopped or anything like that. So we encourage you to view us on truthandliberty.net. And while you're on that website, my goodness, check out all the information that's available for you. Richard, you've done such a fabulous job with this website. It is a source of information. It's amazing. You get access to Richard's blogs, and there's all sorts of news links. And of course, Truth and Liberty is here to be able to provide information on what's happening today through the lens of the Bible, which is the right lens for all of us to be viewing what's happening. And so I want to mention a couple things that are updated. First of all, it's a 24-hour news feed, and so there's always information that's coming there that's new, and some of the recent things that have been added. This is really interesting. It is called truethevote.org, and it is to help stop voter fraud. And not only is it just to report things that seem inconsistent or irregular, but this is actually a way for you to proactively get involved in your local precinct and in the community to be part of the voting process. I can't imagine a better way to get involved to assure us that these elections are going to be run according to God's word and what our Constitution requires. Also, there is how to run for office as a Christian conservative, which is great. Some updates on getting voting assistance. I think a lot of people now need to be able to get to the polls. iVoter Guide is out there, and so much more information, so check it out. Plus, if there's past episodes of Truth and Liberty that you were not able to watch, you can watch it on truthandliberty.net. Also, it's so exciting to see all the events that are continually happening at Andrew Womack Ministries. And the one that is up next is our very infamous Healing is Here conference, where we talk about miracles, healings, and we want to teach and train you, not just to receive your healing, which we believe you will, but to be able to go out in your community and help minister healing to others. So because of what's been happening with the pandemic, this is a live stream only, which is great news. You don't have to travel to Colorado to take part of this. And so go ahead and register for this at awmi.net/events. You'll get the link and be able to join us live, and that is August the 11th through the 14th. Shortly after that, we've got the Ministers Conference, which is October 5th through the 9th. Andrew Womack, Greg Moore, Pastor Bob Yandian, Pastor Dwayne Sheriff, Barry Bennett, Carrie Pickett. It is a loaded group of speakers, and if you are ministered or licensed in ministry, you are eligible to attend this event. Again, awmi.net/events. One of the great things about Truth and Liberty is we give away a product every week, and last week's winner is Sally Beasley. Congratulations, Sally, you won the New You and the Holy Spirit that is autographed by Andrew Womack. And this week we are giving away The Power of Imagination, which is also autographed by Andrew. This is Andrew's newest book, and it is amazing. A lot of times we hear about how imagination is used wrongly, but Andrew explains that the power of imagination is a God-given thing, and we can use imagination to change things for the good in our lives and in the lives of others. So to be eligible to win this gift, just make sure that you're subscribed to Truth and Liberty. And if you are not subscribed today, it's really easy. Go to the website and click on subscribe, and you will be eligible for all of the drawings going forward. Also, as Richard mentioned, this is an interactive live stream. You are going to really enjoy our guest tonight. If you've got something that you would like to have answered, we answer as many questions as possible. So if you're on truthandliberty.net or on awmi.net, you can post that question right there in the chat section. If you're watching on social media, go ahead and put that in the comment section, and those come through. We have a whole team that's standing by to facilitate those questions, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. Also, a reminder that this is a viewer-supported live stream, and so donations are so welcome. They're not tax deductible because we are not a nonprofit. However, this is seed going into a ministry that is very, very important, and I know that God is honoring that and will bring you a great return. But we really appreciate that. It helps support Truth and Liberty so we can continue to get the word out and even reach more people. Finally, if you need prayer, you have a question about this ministry, call our prayer line at 719-635-1111. Some of the topics that we talk about, and tonight we are going to be hearing on a very relevant topic, sometimes cause questions or people need prayer. And so we want to encourage you to take advantage of the prayer line. And with that, Richard, I'll turn it back to you to get started with tonight's Truth and Liberty.
Well, thank you, Karen. That was awesome. How you do such an amazing job with that. I have a copy here of the free giveaway tonight. I thought I'd hold that up. Andrew's new book, The Power of Imagination, and this could change your life. It really could. Teach you how to think positively and imagine your future and the good things that God has for you according to His Word. So subscribe today. We actually hit 14,000 subscribers at Truth and Liberty yesterday, a new milestone. So, yeah, praise God for that. I'm so excited tonight to have as our guest in studio Paul Isaacs. Paul's the Executive Vice President of Save the Storks, and used to be with the Navigators Ministry. I think he's devoted his entire adult life to ministering in some fashion or another. Probably used to be I think you told me you were a youth leader or something like that. You love college kids and that sort of thing. And
absolutely.
I know this man loves the Lord, and this organization that you're with is just phenomenal. And I'm really excited to have you with us tonight.
It's great to be here. What an honor.
Paul, tell us about Save the Storks, would you? What is that? It's a funny name.
Yes.
You can tell us what that's all about too.
Well, sure. Well, Save the Storks exists to partner with pregnancy resource centers all across the United States that are in the trenches doing the work and standing up for women and children. A lot of people have heard and know about Planned Parenthood. It's a monolithic group that works to make everyone have an option to have an abortion. Very much committed to that choice option. But pregnancy centers, there's over 2,500 of them across the United States, exist to help women and offer them more choices. And so Save the Storks wants to help connect those pregnancy resource centers that are pro-life. We want to connect them with those abortion vulnerable young women and women to help them make a life-affirming choice. Now, the idea of Save the Storks in the name is what we found is that a lot of people are against donkeys and a lot of people are against elephants. Those are emotionally charged animals in today's culture, very polarizing. And Save the Storks has chosen the symbol of a stork. An interesting thing, and I don't know if you've noticed this, Richard, and Karen as well, that what we found is that people on the other side of the aisle of us when it comes to this issue of life seem to be always about the latest environmental cause. They're always interested in saving something. And so we chose the name Save the Storks and put it all over, the logos all over our things. And interestingly enough, we will often be stopped at an airport or someplace. My car has Save the Storks, and somebody will come up and say, listen, pal, I've heard about the spotted owl and the whale, but who's killing storks, you know? And so after we have a little fun with them, then they find themselves in a moral conundrum where they were ready to kind of almost join this movement to give their life away for some mysterious bird, but then they find out that we're really about saving the lives of women. Because we believe if we save the life of the woman, we can save the life of the child for sure. So a lot of our messaging and our marketing goes directly toward women.
So save the life of the woman. So tell me about that. What do you mean?
Well, the untold consequence of abortion is I have a lot of women that have, after I speak, will come up to me and they'll put their hand on my shoulder pre-COVID days and they'll say, Paul, you know, where were you, with tears coming down their eyes, where were you when I was 17 years old or when I was 19 years old? If I'd have known about such a thing as a stork bus, and we'll get into what those things are, I would definitely have chosen life. And that's what Save the Storks is. Basically, we build these mobile medical units and we equip them and we make them beautiful and we make them safe and we make them with excellence. And we invite women as they're getting ready to enter an abortion clinic. We'll have that peacefully and lawfully parked somewhere right outside. And with the help of some sidewalk counselors, they'll come forward with a person and say, would you be interested in having a free ultrasound and some free resources today? We can get you in with an appointment right now. And a lot of those women will get on board, and 4 out of 5 of those women will choose life.
Wow.
By just simply seeing an image of their baby and hearing the heartbeat of that baby in surround sound as they sit there with their significant other, whoever came with them.
Wow. You know, we've got 3 kids of our own, and I'll never forget when our first pregnancy, when they put that, I don't know what that device is called, but you put it on the mommy's tummy, and you can actually hear the heartbeat of your child.
Changes your life.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sitting there, I'm a dad, I'm a young man, and I just all of a sudden found myself choked up.
Yep.
It's like, oh my gosh, there's actually, my child is in there. And it's a powerful experience, and you guys are actually making that opportunity available to women to sort of meet their unborn baby before they go through with the abortion. Is that what's happening?
Exactly. There's a bond that happens with a woman where she sees on this beautiful flat screen TV that's right there, and there's another screen right there. There's no way to get around it. And there's the sound of that heartbeat. I remember when I heard my oldest, my little baby Shelby, and I remember thinking, I'm a dad. And I would do anything I could to protect that baby. I would do anything I could to make her healthy and whatever I could do to protect her. And so, yes, I remember that feeling as well.
Wow. So how did Save the Storks get started? I mean, it's such a fantastic idea, right?
It's an amazing story, actually. The young man, his name was Joe, and Joe had been invited to come on like a field trip, so to speak, a missions trip, where there were some passionate young people who were pro-life, and they were at a notorious abortion clinic in the Bronx. And as they were there, he was only there to observe. It was a cold morning, and on that morning, the person who invited him to come wanted to go in for a cup of coffee just to get it, because they were standing in the cold. She went into this cafe right next to the abortion clinic. While she's in there, Joe's just standing there, and this 15-year-old girl comes up to him, a young woman, and says, "I'm here for my appointment," thinking that he was one of the abortion clinic workers that would usher her in. And he had not been prepared for what to do, and he simply said, "You know, I'm not here with this abortion clinic, but I'm here with this group of young people, and we're here just to help, and we'll offer you a free ultrasound and some free resources if you're willing to get on board this van parked around the corner." And as he heard himself saying it sounded a little sketchy with the way he was even saying it. But the interesting thing is this young lady, who I think's name was Samantha, said, "Okay." And he wasn't, again, prepared for the little spiel that he had given, and he certainly wasn't prepared for her to say yes, and he was actually shocked. And so he walked her over to this white van, and he knocked on the door, and they ushered her in. And he just stood there for the next 40 minutes waiting for this young woman to come off, and all he knew to do was to pray. And so as he's praying for this young girl, about 40 minutes later, she steps off, and she's typing in numbers into her phone. And she says, and Joe doesn't know what she's doing. He doesn't know who she's calling. He goes, "Samantha, who are you calling?" She says, "I'm calling my mom to tell her that she's going to be a grandma. I'm going to keep this baby." And immediately he knew then, we need to do this in front of every abortion clinic in every city where there is abortions across the United States. And we need to do it in such a way where a young woman feels valued and safe and loved.
Wow.
And so that's how Save the Storks was begun.
Wow, that's phenomenal. How many buses, you call them stork buses,
Yeah,
right?
we do.
How many buses do you have now?
Well, in 2013, when it was an idea, we had one, and I sat at this payway in Colorado Springs eating Chinese food, hearing this story. I think we had maybe one. I'm not even sure if we had one yet. And then when I came on 2014, I think we had two. And then now we have, I think, 58 or 60.
Oh my
So that
goodness.
we're growing, and we have, I think, 12 more that are signed up to save lives across the country.
Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah.
58 or 60. And do you have offices around the country or facilities, or where are all these buses?
Our headquarters are here in Colorado Springs, but our affiliates are in all the places from Seattle to Sarasota to Virginia and Texas, and we've got some in Grapevine and California and all points in between in Iowa. And so we're everywhere where there are women that are at risk for abortion, and where that pregnancy resource center, who we partner with, where they have the vision to go mobile and connect their brick and mortar facility to that place where lives are being victimized with abortion.
Wow, that's awesome. So how does that work? You park the stork bus near or outside the abortion clinic.
Right.
And then you have trained staff, prayer ministers,
Right.
and people like that are there in the vicinity. And you invite the young women, they're not necessarily young, but you invite the women
Right.
if they'd like to have a free ultrasound. And then what happens once they're inside that bus?
Okay, so it's interesting if I could share with you a story from New Mexico. Yeah. In New Mexico is one of the, I think, 9 states where you can have an abortion all the way up until the moment of birth. And they have a thing in New Mexico called abortion tourism, where people can fly in from other parts of the country or the world and have an abortion there, a late-term abortion. Well, this particular day, there was a woman and her significant other that came there to that abortion clinic to have an abortion. And our affiliate pregnancy center there, dear people of God who care deeply about the women and the children of their community, were parked across the street with a bus, with a stork bus, which is a Mercedes Sprinter. It's beautifully wrapped. It usually says something like free ultrasounds and free pregnancy tests, has a number there with a winsome-looking young woman there on the side. And they're there, they go in. They weren't able to intercept them on their way in, but the young man came out for a smoke. And so he's out there grabbing a smoke, and he sees the van. He sees something about a free ultrasound. The people over there wave at him. So they wave at this young man, and he comes over, and he finds out what it's about. Now, the young woman had stayed inside to be admitted, and she had had a wristband put on, just like you would at a clinic or a hospital, and she's there. She comes out while they're still getting the room prepared and cleaned up, which I think was divine providence, that room was not ready. So she comes out to get a smoke as well, and she sees her significant over there, and he waves her over, and she comes over, and they say, you know what, we could give you an ultrasound right now if that's something that you're interested in. We'll do it for free while you wait. And they said, what do we have to lose? So they did. And they got in there, and they saw that image of their baby. And they heard the heartbeat. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And both of them said, we can't do this. And so they said, do you have scissors that we could take this wristband off? And the person that had showed them the baby said, well, sure, give me just a second. She turns around to find some scissors, and she can't find them fast enough. That girl ripped that armband off, that admission band. And for the next 45 minutes to an hour, they engaged with that person and another person on the Stork bus. And they led those two people to faith in Jesus Christ. Now, to me, that's what a Stork bus is all about.
I was going to ask, do you have opportunity
Absolutely.
To minister to these young women and their significant others or whatever?
Yes.
In that context?
One time I was speaking for a pregnancy resource center at their fundraiser, but they wanted me to come out that day to the college campus where they park, and they provide STD tests or STI tests. But they invited me to come on the Stork bus because there was a young man coming on, and they gave him a talk, and there was a reason why he had to have that STD test that day. And we talked with him about those things and the worker there. But then we engaged him about what the deeper thing that was going on in his heart. He was seeking relationships with women outside of God's plan of marriage. And we engaged him with that. And we said, you know what, you could ask Jesus to be the center of your life right now. Would you be interested in praying? And that young man prayed with me there on that Stork bus in North Carolina to receive Christ as a Savior. These kind of things happen all across the United States with Stork buses.
Wow, that's fantastic. Isn't that amazing? Paul, I'm sure that these Stork buses are, that there's some cost involved in developing these. How does Save the Storks find the resources to do that?
Well, we have generous donors that give anywhere between $5 and $10 a month, and some they get something in their heart that says, and they have the resources that says, I want to purchase a Stork bus. And a lot of times we'll give the opportunity to name the Stork bus. We have Stork buses named Paul because the person who wanted it, and it'll just say Paul, or the Stork bus, Jim or something like that, or Jim and Kathy or something. So one interesting thing, and we were talking about it before, I went to a college in South Carolina, Bob Jones University, back in the early 90s. And they've recently asked me to come back and speak. And this was a group of young people that were so excited about the vision of Save the Storks that they wanted to get one in their local community. So we identified a group in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and they had a Bible conference. And in that Bible conference, they made that their missions project. And for 3 or 4 days, we talked about Save the Storks. They wrestled around with, people from back home and wrote letters and said, would you consider, giving to this project? And they raised, in 3 or 4 days, they raised $194,000, which is more than covered the cost of a Stork bus and I think a 3 or 4D image ultrasound machine. So we have partners like Kirk Cameron that work with us to raise money and raise up $35 a month donors all over the United States. We have all kinds of things that people do, lemonade stands to raise money for the unborn and for these women.
Wow, that's great. So if people want to help you in this mission to save innocent babies, they can go to what? Your website?
They could go to our website, SaveTheStorks.com.
Okay.
SaveTheStorks.com, and they can find a way to give right there.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Well, Paul, that's just so amazing. I think we helped people in Colorado and locally to see the Unplanned movie, last year, and I think that Save the Storks had a little bit of pub at the end of that.
We did.
At the end of that film, but what an awesome What an awesome idea. You know, so much of the time when we talk about pro-life issues, we're talking about the political angle of it. And there's, like you mentioned, I think Students for Life, and there's lots of organizations that engage in the political discussion and that kind of thing. But Save the Storks is really focused on the individual, right? And on the people that are in need in that situation. And do you feel like that there's a legitimate need for both of those segments of ministry? Absolutely.
Thank the Lord that there are people that are willing to take the arrows that people take in the realm of politics to stand for the unborn. I thank God for just the lawmakers and the people that work behind the scenes, and even lobbyists, that are there trying their best to move the issue of life forward. I know that there's not one silver bullet, and God has given different callings to different people. Thankfully, we've got people in government. Thankfully, we have tremendous apologists that teach us about the value and the sanctity of life. Save the Storks tends to be more activists. We see a need, and we see a way to engage this tragedy called abortion in a way that we hope is winsome and loving. Our taglines are love, compassion, and action. We will not, and nor would I ever want to in any way insinuate that there's not a place for politics and there's not a place for these other ways to engage the issue. But for us, God's called us to this flavor of ministry, and we're going to try to do it as well as we can.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Do you know, one of the things listening to this that just really struck me is that when women come in, and you've mentioned a lot about the fathers being with them too, which is amazing, and they hear that heartbeat, that immediately they have a realization that there is a baby in there. It's so unfortunate, because what the media is teaching people, what our schools now are teaching, is that all that is a clump of cells. And so could you just comment on that, about, some of the things that you've seen, or the impact that is having when people realize that they've been lied to all their life about what's actually happening on the inside of these women?
Yeah, we were talking before the show started about a book that I've read by a guy named Andy Andrews. The book is entitled How to Kill 11 Million People. And the crux of the book is that you lie to them. You tell them a big lie, you tell it often. One of the original lies that has been dispelled because of modern technology is that it was just a clump of cells. It's interesting that with such a clump of cells came such shame and guilt and pain for the woman if it was just a clump of cells. What I want to see in our church across the United States, and I'm talking Big C Church, is a place where women who have had abortions, because what our research has said is that 1 out of 3 women who are sitting in a Planned Parenthood would self-identify as born again, fundamentalist, charismatic, or evangelical. 1 out of 3. We talk about the idea of being supported by the federal government, about how Planned Parenthood receives $500 million, but the church, through obtaining abortions, gives, I think, $250 million in the fees that they pay for abortions every year. And so I want the church to be a place where those women who were lied to by the enemy and said, you can do this, you just need to get rid of this, it'll all go away. And then when they do it, the enemy says, how could you? You killed your baby. I want the church to be a place that is a place of restoration and healing and forgiveness, where a woman who most often has never shared her story. We can share all kinds of acceptable sins in our churches, but the sin of abortion seems to weigh us down. There's certain sins that we're not really comfortable to talk about. But there was a megachurch pastor and his wife that one time they realized that they needed to be the leaders in this. And so after Save the Storks had given a talk at their church, the pastor stood up in front of his people and he said, I want you all to know the story of my wife and I. And that early on, way before there was a church or anything, that we participated in this. And God has forgiven us, and we have sought His forgiveness and redemption, and we are being made whole. They gave an altar call And that altar was full. We've been to, I went to, you mentioned men. There's a men's conference that we went to with several thousand men in Orlando a couple years ago. And we talked about this, and we had a stork bus out there, and they could sit on a stork bus and see what it was all about. They lined up for a line for 2 hours. And when they came through and they saw the stork bus, we had our friend Victoria Robinson was there, and she would show them about it, tell them about it. And many of them would just reach down and quietly whisper into her ear, I drove a young woman 30 years ago to have an abortion, and I've never told anybody. And with tears coming down their eyes. So it affects men as well. And we want the church, Save the Storks. It's one of my biggest goals right now, and an initiative that I'm working with, is to bring the church into this issue in a way that we can engage them, we can engage women and men, get healing and restoration, and talk about this and prevent it from our young people as well.
Mm-hmm. You know, it seems like that in this debate and discussion nationwide, a lot of times it's another example of where we get polarized, you know, into our camps. And it seems like you got the Christians here saying it's murder, and then you have the non-Christians over here saying it's our body, and it's a woman's right to control. And I think sometimes we as Christians can come across as actually uncaring toward the women, especially young single moms who are facing this incredible situation of having a baby at a young age, or unmarried, or maybe they've already got kids and they don't have any money, they don't know how they're going to support the child. But Save the Storks is like coming in between this debate in a way that's just real and loving and providing for people. Am I seeing that the right way?
You are, but I would also say that we're storytellers at Save the Storks. We're trying to tell the story of these pregnancy centers all over the country that are right there, that they don't know about. Oftentimes the young woman who's scared doesn't know that this pregnancy center exists. Sometimes the churches don't even know they exist, but they're there and they want to help. And so someone says, all you care about is a baby being born. That is not true. That is a lie from the enemy. Because what we want to do is we want to provide them more choices than just an abortion. Because what a girl, if she gets on a stork bus, she basically right now has 3 choices. I'm working on a 4th one, but she basically has 3 choices. She can continue to go through and have that abortion. And if she does, if that's what the enemy convinces her is the right thing to do, we want to let her know with that pregnancy center that we are going to be there as children of God ourselves, broken vessels, that we're going to be there to grieve with her. What does she need there? Because what's our option? Do we stiff arm her? Do we say we don't want anything to do with you now? No, that's when she may be in the most pain. The second option is, we can help you parent this child. These wonderful pregnancy centers across the country provide diapers. They provide prenatal vitamins. They provide formula years into that child's life, parenting classes, resources that they don't even know exist. And we want to help that pregnancy center incorporate that woman and the young man and that child into the life of the church. That's where discipleship can take place, is the church. The other thing is, there's a mile long. If you feel like you cannot be a parent to this child right now, I know my wife and I, we've adopted one. We have 3 natural born, and we have one dear, dear, beautiful young lady that we adopted when she was a year old. And there are so many Christians waiting and would love to adopt that child if that woman doesn't feel like she's ready yet.
Praise God. That's awesome. Well,
that's awesome. I was really impressed, Paul, when you said that 1 of 3 of the people sitting in Planned Parenthood are Christians, and that just tells me that we probably have people in the audience watching tonight that have gone through that, and I just love the approach and the heart with it. But I want to encourage people that, if this is really, you're hearing this, or maybe you're somebody that has gone through this, or maybe one of those men that went through this with somebody, we're here for you.
Yeah.
No condemnation. I want to encourage you to call our prayer line if you want prayer at 719-635-1111. We would love to hear from you, and just to encourage you that God loves you, you are forgiven, and this is just another opportunity for redemption and forgiveness. So give us a call if you are in that situation.
Oh, that's great, Karen. Thank you for that. That's awesome. You know, Paul, you were saying that in the Holocaust, 11 million Jews were murdered, and that they did it by telling a big lie and telling it often. It seems to me that in the abortion debate, that one of the lies that young women are told is that if you have this baby, your life will be ruined. And you kind of touched on that earlier. Actually, y'all are providing women with options. And other choices besides killing that innocent baby, and that's amazing.
I've never met someone, and maybe Karen, you can speak to this as well, and Richard, I've never met someone that's regretted the child that they're holding or that is growing up in their home, no matter how hard their circumstances are. And there are hard circumstances that I'm not, that I didn't grow up in.
Yeah.
We all have challenges, but I have never met someone who said, I regret having that child. I have, on the other hand, heard the regret and the grief that comes from choosing abortion. So, anytime we at Save the Storks, and this is something I wanted to say to Karen, to what you said, anytime we're faced with any injustice, we basically have one of three approaches that we can go with. We can go with anger, which is a natural response when you see like abortion or human trafficking or children being victimized in any way and women being victimized. It can do something in us that causes an anger. But the problem with anger is that it shuts down any innovative type spirit about how to really move forward and provide solutions. The second one is an apathy. We can say, well, it's such a huge problem that I can't do anything about it, so I'm just going to raise my kids and I'm going to attend church once a week or twice a week, and I'm going to go about my thing, make money, because there's nothing that I really can do. And that's sad, and I feel like that's why we're where we're at a lot of times in the church with any injustice. But the third approach, I think, is what Save the Storks is trying to do, is that we approach this thing with our own sense of brokenness. As a man, I have to do this, especially when I'm being told I don't have a right to speak into abortion because it's supposedly a woman's issue. This is not, it's a father issue. It is a woman's issue. It's a child issue. There's a lot of issues going on, but I have to say, I too am broken. I too have sin in my life that I've had to be forgiven of and rescued from and redeemed of. And I think that when we approach it with that posture, God gives us a sense of innovation and ingenuity that we can to say, what do we need to do to help this woman? What can we do to help end this and make not necessarily abortion unlawful? Because thankfully we have Supreme Court justices and politicians, some that want to do that. But that's not what Save the Storks is trying to do. Save the Storks wants to do something that makes abortion unthinkable and unimaginable.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I want to kind of shift gears, if we can, a little bit and talk about this from another angle.
Okay.
How many? So in America, there's how many babies are killed through abortion in this country every year? Do you know that?
Every year, and I wanted to make sure I got this right. And the most recent statistics that I could find were 2018. Basically, we look at 2,400 a day. And I can't remember what that was.
2,400 a day.
Yeah, 2,400 a day.
So so what's going on in America right now is these riots that are taking place in American cities where people are being killed, police officers are being killed, some protesters even being injured, and you have buildings set on fire and this massive unrest. And I'm not expressing any opinion right now about whether that's good, bad, right, wrong, whatever. I just want to give some context. With abortion, I read the other day, you correct me if I'm wrong because you probably have the better figures here, but there are 365,000 black babies killed through abortion every single year in that country. Am I right on that?
You're right. I mean, we saw and did the research that 38% of those 2,400 that are killed every day would be African American. So 19% were Hispanic, 35% white. So really what we're talking about is 912 African American children die every day to abortion.
And I saw another statistic that said that, there's a number of people that are killed by police in America in a given year. And that in, I think, 2017, the number, or if you average like 16, 17, and 18, the average number of black people that are killed by police officers in this country is about 230 per year. Per year.
Yeah.
So, as a church now that's a terrible thing, right?
Absolutely.
That's a terrible thing, especially when it's unjustified. We don't want anybody killed. But if you compare that 230 a year to 2,500, 2,700 per day,
Right.
Per day of black people who never have a chance at life whatsoever,
Right.
because they're murdered in the womb.
As you said, we don't like to see the unjust taking of anyone's life.
Right.
Let's all agree with that. Like that is a baseline.
Right.
We agree with that. That being said, I don't know where the next George Floyd is going to happen.
Hopefully never, but
I hope it never happens. You're exactly right. I don't know where the next child abduction is going to happen. But I do know in Charlotte where 15 children are going to die every day at an abortion clinic. I know it's going to happen. They schedule them every day. They schedule it, and we know it's going to happen. I know all over the country they schedule them. I know that it happens in Colorado Springs. They schedule it. We know where these children are going to die, and we know the women whose lives will be impacted forever. And there has to be a sense of, I don't know, of grief. Maybe help me with another word of a sense of what can we do?
yeah.
What can we do about this to help these young people?
Right. Well, I was just thinking, the reason I laid all that out like that is because I'm thinking, what if the church, or just not even the church, what if Americans would become as upset about the 2,700 black people or whatever it is, 9,000 that are killed every single day in America through abortion as are killed every year by police. There's something, a kilter here in terms
You're
of our
right.
passion and our sense of injustice.
Well, I think that goes back to, in a sense, and I don't mean to be conspiracy theorist, but what does the media tell us?
Yeah.
What does the media tell us is the problem?
Yeah.
And we have to engage with God. We have to hunger. I love what Jesus said. He says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because they will be filled." And this is an area where we can do this.
Well, Paul, we could sit here and talk all night long about this, and I would love to, I want to, but I know we've got a lot of questions coming in from our viewers, and I can see them coming in here. I know they're passionate and deeply concerned about this. So why don't I turn it over to Karen? She's going to submit some of those questions, and let's see what they have to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could just add just one comment too, is the percentage of African American babies that are being aborted, it's disproportionately high compared to the overall population.
Yes.
And so that's an important point too, is there are more African American babies per capita, you might say, than Caucasian or Hispanic, and we'll uncover and talk about more of some of that targeting. But we are really experiencing a lot of questions. This is a topic that people are passionate about. And so the first one, Paul, is how can I get a bus at my local Planned Parenthood? Do I have to be an employee to start one?
An employee of
Save the Storks.
Save the Storks. No, you do not have to be. What has been our model so far is that we have worked with pregnancy centers there on the ground and equip them, help them get that. But God has to lay it on that pregnancy center's, the executive director, the board, their heart to do that type of mobile ministry. It's not necessarily everyone's calling. There might be, as in Greenville, they have a brick and mortar facility right across the street from the Planned Parenthood. So for them to have a van doesn't necessarily fit. So where there's a fit and where there's a calling, we want to go there and we want to help. We want to help them raise money. We want to engage with their people to do whatever it takes to be incarnational. The one thing I like about Jesus is he did not wait for us to be able to get to him. He came to us. And that's why we see women and the way Jesus did, the woman at the well, the woman caught in adultery, his heart was broken and he didn't wait for them to be able to get to him. He went to them, like he went to Samaria. And so I would say, if you're interested, begin engaging with your local pregnancy center. I will say this, I'll give you my personal email, if I think that's okay, and that is...
If you want to.
It's paul@savethestorks.com. It's very easy, paul@savethestorks.com. One thing that we think might be a way to get a stork bus in a community, to do things that wouldn't just be, let's say there's abortions that are done 1 or 2 days a week in that particular city. Well, what about meeting the needs of the community in other ways, like feeding these kids or putting shoes on their feet with different organizations, earning the right to be heard and earning the right to do an ultrasound, so to speak, when the time comes. We've talked about locally just teaming up with churches to do that as well. So we're open to doing a lot of different things and getting creative to save the lives of women and children.
That's awesome. This is a question from Ruthie on chat. Ruthie always has really good questions. And she asked this: how should we address people who believe abortion is morally wrong, but also fear back alley abortions?
Wow. That would be, in a sense, the same way that we could, let's talk about slavery, for example. For us to have, and this is going to be kind of, I don't know how to, this is rough what I'm getting ready to say. For us to say, you know what, if we got rid of slavery in the United States, that's still not going to end slavery in this world. We still have human trafficking. We still have, the sex slave trade. So why get rid of slavery in the United States? We would say that's an interesting line of reasoning. I would say as well to Ruthie, and Ruthie, by the way, I think it's an amazing question. And it tries to back people into a corner, like me and like you. I would say this about that. Imagine there's a burning home. And in that home, I know there are 10 kids that are in that home. And I'm standing outside that home. Would I say to myself, I'm not going to go in there and save those kids if I can't save them all? If I can only save 7, not going in. Not Paul. Paul's going to go in and save as many as he can. And for me, that's the same way with this idea of legalizing or making abortion illegal. Again, that's not Save the Storks' role, but I long for a day. I long for a day when that's no longer a legal thing to do in the United States. But I'll save as many as I can.
Wow, that's a great answer, Paul. I like that analogy. Thank you. This is a question that is really good as well. And the question is, when does Save the Storks say that life begins?
Oh, wow. That's I say, this is Paul, and I just want to make sure I say it. I believe life begins at conception. I see that throughout the scriptures. And it's interesting, we have a study that pro-choice people and pro-life people tend to agree that there's a consensus, 67% of those people say that life begins at the heartbeat. So that's not Save the Storks belief, and that's not my belief. I believe it begins at conception. But can you imagine, pro-choice people tend to even agree that yes, once there's a heartbeat, that baby's alive. 67%. Mm-hmm. So, but we would say that life begins at conception.
Well, if they believe that life begins at conception, how do they continue to maintain that the mother has a right to end that life?
They would not say that life begins at conception. I say that.
Well,
they believe that the life begins. They agree that at least at the heartbeat that we know that it's alive.
Okay, so like if they'll agree it begins at the heartbeat, which is what, 8 weeks?
Yeah, at least.
Okay, or less
Yeah.
after conception. How do they continue to maintain that a woman has a right to abort that baby after that time?
I would go so far as to say the enemy is so subtle and so keen. When I think of in my life how I'm able to justify things that I do, the mental gymnastics that we as Christians can do to justify our actions, I think the enemy is alive at work there with the image of God, and the enemy wants to take the life. So he'll tell lies, and he'll create justifications. He'll encourage them to take the life of their baby, and as soon as they do, he'll destroy them with shame and guilt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, this is a question coming in from guest 3507. And they're asking, do you also provide housing, a job, and transportation for this woman to succeed with a newborn? They said they're just wondering how long-term your services are.
That depends on the Pregnancy Resource Center. One of the things that, and there's no necessarily uniformity across the board on what the funding is for those pregnancy centers and what they can afford. And that's why I want the church involved in this. Because if we're going to say we care about this baby and we care about the woman, then we're going to come alongside them and we're going to help them. There's some deep issues here. You know, the issues of poverty, the issues of and generational poverty and things like that we have to figure out as a church. But I think that's one of the best places to do that is the church. And when the church says, okay, we're not going to judge, we're not going to try to figure out all the problems but we're going to be here for this woman. We're going to be here for this baby. We're going to be here for this man. And I can't say, like that every group provides a car. But those are things that I'm working on. Those are things that I'm thinking about.
That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
We have an international audience, and this question is coming in from Rita Walker, and she's wondering if it's possible to set up a stork bus in London, Ontario, or Canada.
That's a great question. I was in talks one time with a guy from Wimbledon, believe it or not, and I would love nothing more than to have a stork bus in England. Canada's laws right now, we had a young lady who was trying to raise money, are so interesting. They've made it so if you're pro-life and if you engage in pro-life speech, that it's verging on hate speech. I don't know if you're aware of this. But,
I've heard about that.
But the Canadian, the culture up there is very much anti-pro-life and how you even engage this issue. We have to pray about how we can get up there and get to England as well. But again, my email, I think we provided at paul@savethestorks.com. I'd like to figure it out.
Wow, that's awesome to know that you're thinking that way, because this is a ministry that could help people all over the world. Mm-hmm. As we're thinking about this subject, I think some people want to know, Paul, how can they? Is there an opportunity to volunteer directly for Save the Storks, or do they need to go through their local crisis pregnancy center?
We're such champions of pregnancy resource centers, and we always want to do that, that we would say the real ministry, the thing that'll get your heart into this, into the pro-life movement is actually through the pregnancy center. I would also say this. I would challenge you, I've got ways that I can do this, but I would challenge you to potentially go to your local abortion clinic in a loving and a peaceful way and just pray. Just begin, maybe take someone with you and just simply pray and watch and see what happens. And see what God is doing and ask God to lead you in a way. But are there ways to get involved with Save the Storks? We have people that deliver stork buses. You know, they drive for us. There are different things that we can find sometimes, but the majority of things we want to push people toward those pregnancy resource centers.
I see. That's awesome. Well, I wanted to just mention a piece of news. There was, this is not necessarily good news, right? You have some good news and some not so good news on this issue, but there was a federal judge in Maryland last week that held that a rule by the Federal Drug Administration that said that the abortion pill could only be prescribed by a doctor and administered, I think was the rule, administered at a doctor's clinic, okay, was an unconstitutional impediment to the woman's right to have access to an abortion. And my question for you, Paul, is, you guys work in this field. Are there health risks to the abortion pill? What do we know about that?
Well, what I know is I've researched before coming on here, and there's a lot of things that go on with abortions that are even unreported. Mm-hmm. The abortion numbers that we have sometimes don't include these abortion pills because these were not clinical abortions. We don't know what's happened. We don't know. So I would imagine that the numbers of abortions that I've even stated 2,400 a day, it actually is probably higher when you include the abortion pill.
Oh, yeah.
That said, researchers have found in a study that among abortions reviewed, the complication rate was 5.2% for women who took the abortion pill compared to 1.3% who did surgical abortions. There is a much greater risk of complications from an abortion pill.
I remember in the Unplanned movie there was a scene where Abby Johnson took the pill, and she was told it's no big deal, and then later she's at home and she starts bleeding and just completely debilitated because of how her body was responding to that. So you know, there's a need for complete information out there on all aspects of this. So well, but you guys are doing a great work. That's obvious, and I hope that you just get a flood of support tonight after coming on here. And we're gonna put a link to your website on our website as a resource for Christians or anybody who wants to get involved, who wants to do something tangible, something practical that they can do to help save the life of the unborn. But Paul, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been an awesome time with you. And Karen, thanks for helping co-host, as always. It's so good. And you know, I just want to say to everybody that's watching, thank you for watching Truth and Liberty. Please consider becoming a member of our coalition. Go to our website and just click on the donate button. It'll tell you how to do that. And keep up hope, keep up faith for America. God's not done with us. And we'll see you guys next Monday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Truth and Liberty.
Join us next time for the Truth and Liberty broadcast. Find tonight's episode and related articles and links at truthandliberty.net. Truth and Liberty is viewer supported. If you'd like to help us continue our live casts, you can make a donation at truthandliberty.net.